Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give show. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today we have Chris Dayley from Disruptive Advertising. Chris started his life doing a business major, which is really code for he didn't know what he wanted to do in life. And then he found his way into SEO and he was really brilliant at that, and he drove 3 times traffic. And what he realized is that the traffic wasn't the problem. It was actually the leaking bucket. He actually needed to better optimize his website, or the company that he was working for, their website. So he sort of went deep into optimization and realized that a lot of the external agencies he was using were either overpriced or not experienced. So he spoke to his wife, a lot of mentors, and he shares a lot of tips around that. And he ended up creating his own agency, which after 3 months, he'd already achieved his 6-month financial goals. He gives some brilliant tips on how to do site optimization, and he also gives a lot of other life tips. It's a brilliant, really brilliant episode. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Chris Dayley from Disrupt Digital. I'm Paul Higgins from Build, Live, Give, and this is just a short episode to talk about an exciting change for the Build, Live, Give show. It's actually going to change its title. So in the future, you'll hear it as Corporate Escapees, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. So why the change? Look, we love the brand name Build, Live, Give. It's about building your dream business, living a great life, and also giving back. But it wasn't really resonating with our target market, who are the corporate escapees. Like me, escaped Coca-Cola in 2011. I've been running my own businesses since then, and we really wanted to hone in on that. So I was fortunate enough to have Michael O'Neill from Solopreneur Hour to my place, and we brainstormed what we should do, and we came up with a couple of concepts. And then I remembered a conversation I had with Anthony Chancersmooth from Simple Creative Marketing. Anthony spoke about Hub Australia, the work that he did there, and often people would say or identify as being a corporate escapee. So I quickly went on to the domain to see if the domain was available, and I could not believe it. corporateescapees.com was available. So it seemed like all the heavens aligned, and I'm very excited about our new name. And I know a little bit about branding. I'd worked for Coca-Cola for 18 years, and it was a brilliant company, and it just really taught me the power of a brand. I think Coke's roughly 160 years old, and I really want to have a strong brand. So Build, Live, Give will continue to be the key brand, and then Corporate Escapees will be the name of our podcast. And I would also love to thank Jackie Baker and her team at Silver Lane Agency for helping us do a lot of the rebranding and making our brand come to life. They've done a brilliant job. So if you're loving the podcast, I'd love you to share it with other corporate escapees. You know, we're really a community here that really solved an issue that I had. So I spent about 5 years in the wilderness once I left corporate. I really loved building my own business. I loved the lifestyle, but I just wasn't getting the financial reward that I wanted, and certainly that my wife wanted. So I actually ended up joining a community myself. Took a lot of the learnings out of that community. Is brilliant. It really set me up to come up with Build, Live, Give. But I realized that there wasn't anything out there for corporate escapees that are running their own business. So that's why I created the Build, Live, Give community. And that's why I'll continue to put some brilliant guests on talking about their journey, where they've escaped corporate and now they're running very successful businesses. So we'll continue to do that. So if that's resonating with you, please share it with those corporate escapees. And I can't wait to bring you a lot more episodes in the future. Thank you. I'm Paul Higgins from Corporate Escapees, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. If you're enjoying listening to these journeys, just letting you know we have a community for ex-career people running profitable businesses just like you. It's called BLG Boost. You get exclusive access to a forum of like-minded peers answering your most pressing questions 24/7. You get specific action tips to solve your most common challenges. You get trusted suppliers to remove lost time. You also get access to member exclusive offers to save you money. You also get access to myself as a coach directly on a one-on-one basis. You get weekly videos from global experts. And finally, you get monthly webinars solving topics mentioned in popular threads. If you're tired of being alone and want to rapidly grow your dream business, go to buildlivegive.com/BLG boost. This link is in the show notes. Please check it out. Okay, I will see you inside. I want to get to know a lot about you today, Chris, but why don't you start with a bit of your backstory?
So my backstory, I got my very first job in corporate America. Actually, it was a sales position, and I was selling digital marketing. And so, I had no real passion at the time. I was going to school. I was in school for a business management degree, which means I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so, I got this sales job. I ended up selling search engine optimization. And that was just fascinating to me. I had never really had anything that I was very passionate about, to be honest. But it was very interesting to me that people were able to influence the Google search results, something that I interacted with every single day of my life. And so, as soon as an internal position opened up, I applied for it, got a job doing SEO, and was kind of on my way. So I spent a few years doing search engine optimization for companies. I was in-house for a company where I was really having a lot of success with search engine optimization. We were driving a ton of traffic to our website. And in fact, in about a 9-month period, we had tripled the organic traffic that was being sent to our site, which was a huge achievement. But as we started to dive into the analytics, we started to realize that most of that traffic we were sending to the site wasn't actually converting. Nobody was buying anything or signing up for anything. And, as anybody who's ever tried to get traffic to their site knows, like, nothing is more frustrating than getting people to your site and they don't convert. So I started diving into it, trying to figure out what was going on. And bottom line was, no one could tell me why the traffic wasn't converting. And so that is when I discovered the industry that I have now been in for the last 5 years or so, 5 or 6 years, which is conversion optimization. So I discovered that you could run some tests on your website, you could change some things up, see how the audience responded to it, and potentially influence your audience on your website. And that was kind of interesting to me. I thought, what the heck, let's give it a shot. I've got no other options anyways at this point. And so ran an A/B test on my site. Conversion rates went up. I got super excited. And that's when I really fell in love with the idea of conversion rate optimization. And the thing that I fell the most in love with was understanding what makes people tick, especially online. Like, what is it that influences people to make decisions? Why do people make decisions to buy things from certain sites rather than others? Because the version of the site that I had created wasn't really that good. It didn't look any better, but it converted better. And so that's where I really found that passion for figuring out what makes people make decisions. So I spent a few years doing conversion rate optimization. I was in-house for another company doing conversion rate optimization, and we were having bandwidth issues. So, with conversion rate optimization, running tests on your website, for a lot of tests, you need developers, you need designers, and as is the case with most companies, development bandwidth was tight and designer bandwidth was tight. And so I was really restricted to how much I could actually do. And so I got really frustrated with that. I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to be held back. I like to, just keep moving forward and make crap happen. And so I started looking for agencies to help me to basically add bandwidth to my current team and my capacity. And all of the solutions that I found in the market were either overpriced or didn't have any kind of expertise that I was looking for. And I was just blown away by that. And so I, thought to myself, well, maybe I'll just create the solution that I'm looking for. And so that kind of leads me up to kind of the point at which I considered starting my own company.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic backstory. And just to go back into you for a moment, what do family and friends know about you outside of work that the BLG audience may not?
So yeah, one thing that I have gotten into lately, I've become a fan of developing talents for myself. Discovering and developing talents. And so for Father's Day earlier this year, my wife bought me. I've always been into Bob Ross. I used to watch Bob Ross, the painter, on TV when I was a kid, and uh, and so my wife bought me, kind of on a whim. She bought me this like Bob Ross starter kit with like paintbrushes and paints and all this stuff. And so I thought, what the heck, we'll try it out. I've never been a very artistic person, uh, but as luck would have it, I churned out like the very first painting I did actually resembled a painting. Like, it looked decent. So I've spent the last, whatever it is, 5 or 6 months just really kind of obsessing over painting. It's just become a real hobby of mine, and I absolutely love it.
Oh, excellent. And, as you said, you sort of couldn't find a solution yourself and then decided to go and scratch your own itch and create it yourself. What was sort of that defining moment? Can you take us to that moment when you decided, well, that's it, I'm actually going to leave the safety of a job and actually start my own agency?
Yeah, so this is, I mean, anybody who's ever done this before, even thought of doing this before, knows that it's a very, very hard decision, especially when you're not entrepreneurial by nature. And when I say that, I mean, I'm not the kind of guy who always wanted to start my own company. There's a lot of people that are like that. I'm not one of those. I am, if people have read the book, The E Myth, I am your typical technician entrepreneur. I was great at what I did. I wanted to, provide a solution, but I am not like your natural born leader or your natural born entrepreneur that's just driven to create something. And so yeah, there was a long thought process and a lot of hard conversations with my wife, a lot of hard conversations with business mentors, and that's really what ended up giving me the motivation to leave. Was a combination of, I had some business mentors that I had worked with, and I had some conversations with them around, well, what if maybe I can just start this on the side, and then once I start generating enough revenue on the side, then I'll do it full time. Which is, I think, the easy choice that most wannabe entrepreneurs go to. Like, oh, okay, I'll just start on the side, and eventually it'll just blow up, and then I'll quit my job. And so, of course, the advice that I got, which most people have probably heard this advice, is no. If you are going to start a company, you have to do it, because your company is never going to succeed with part of your attention. Like, you have to either be all in or just forget about it. And so, my wife and I sat down and basically asked ourselves, okay, if we're going to do this, some of the advice that I got was, it's very important to have a specific time frame and have very specific revenue objectives that you're shooting towards. And if you don't hit those revenue objectives in the time frame you specified, you need to be willing to walk away from it. Because my wife and mine's biggest concern is that I would just be living on a pipe dream for my whole life. I'd quit my job, and then I would just be constantly chasing, uh, like a dog chasing cars.
Mm.
um, and so we sat down, we outlined what those revenue objectives were going to be. I gave myself 6 months, which isn't a very long time for an entrepreneur. But that's what I was willing to commit to. I said, I can definitely do this for 6 months, even if nothing works out. And then if we're not at least trending in the right direction by 6 months, then I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go back and get a job. And so that was kind of part of what needed to happen in order for us to feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, and because I love that analogy of sort of burning the platform. I got that advice, and I give that advice to people, so I fully support that. How did you go in that first 6 months? Did you meet the objectives that you'd set with your wife and your family?
I did. So I was very fortunate. I had a lot of things just kind of worked out in my favor. So, a lot of one of the other reasons that I kind of wanted to start a business is I had a lot of people, former coworkers or bosses or whatever, ask me for help, um, ask me for consulting or ideas, or help with testing on their website. And so I was able to hit up a lot of those people, and I got, I think, 3 clients within my first 3 months. And so within that first 3 months, I actually had met my 6-month revenue objective. And so at that point, 3 months into this thing, I knew that I had something worthwhile. And that's a very empowering place to get to. Again, for anybody who's done this before, or anyone who's thinking about it, I mean, there is nothing more empowering than starting your own business and realizing I can do this. Like, not just I think I can do this, but actually realizing that and going, I can do this. I can provide a life for myself. And that was an incredible feeling. And I mean, that first 6 months though, I mean, once I got those first few clients, I didn't really know, I didn't know what to do after that. Like, I had never run a business before. I didn't know how to grow a business. I started in sales, but that was like almost 10 years before. And so, I didn't really have a lot of sales experience, and I definitely had never sold what I was doing at the time. And so, so there was a lot of learning, a lot of really hard learning after I got those first few clients to figure out, okay, how do I keep growing? How do I find new clients? It's people aren't just going to come and hand them to me all the time. And so how do I keep growing this thing? So there was a lot of struggles. I don't want to make it sound like it just all fell into my lap, but those first 3 months were definitely motivating and encouraging for me.
And, was there ever a time, has there ever been a time where you thought, no, actually, I'm going to shut up shop and go back and get the safety of a job again?
Yeah, there's been quite a few times. I mean, again, I think for every entrepreneur, and I think there's different points for different people. And it's usually anytime you meet a huge obstacle that you don't know how to overcome. I mean, those big obstacles could be you're about to go out of business, those big obstacles. For me, those big obstacles were, one of the biggest obstacles that I faced at first was figuring out how to keep growing this thing. And especially when my first big client canceled, and I think that was like 6 months into me starting a business. So about 6 months after I started, my first client canceled, and it was a big client. It was like over half my income. And I was like, crap, like, what do I do? And that's when I realized how volatile running your own business is. Like, it's not nearly as consistent as a full-time job. And, and so that the safety and security and the regular paycheck is definitely alluring when you first have that big, like, fluctuation in income. And you go, crap, if this continues, like, I'm not in good shape. So that was one of the first times. And then I think another time that actually happened, which was surprisingly almost just as hard, if not harder, than when I lost my first client, was when I had kind of hit my own capacity. When I had brought on so many clients that at that point I had to decide, like, okay, now this is getting real. Like, do I want to, like, build a company right now? Do I want to? Because if I hire an employee at this point, I'm already at my capacity. If I add on training a new employee on top of that, like, I'm really going to be stretching my bandwidth. Like, this kind of sucks. And so that was another point at which I really considered, what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, there have been quite a few times when I really wasn't sure if I wanted to continue doing my own thing.
Yeah, and what sort of help did you get? So when you reached those critical points in the growth of your business, what help did you get, or who did you turn to for advice?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I've always been a big believer in having successful mentors, so people that are far down the path. There have been a few entrepreneurs that I've turned to regularly for advice. And then on top of that, I am also a big believer in using things like networking groups or like entrepreneur type organizations to just talk to other entrepreneurs and really sharpen your skill set, because being an entrepreneur can be very, very lonely. You are dealing with challenges and struggles every day that feel like life or death. And it's really hard, even if you have a significant other, like your spouse, a lot of times you don't feel like you can talk to your spouse about it because If your spouse understands the magnitude of challenges you're struggling with, they might freak out too, because then they think that, everything, the whole world is going to collapse. And so it can be very, very, very lonely. And so I believe that it is important to get involved in these kind of organizations and get involved in mentoring or business coaching kind of programs, so that you can voice those struggles and then get advice from other people who have been there. So yeah, I got a lot of really good advice, and especially around the time when I was struggling with what do I want to do long term. That is when I got some really good advice, which was to really sit down and figure out what motivates me. Like, what is motivating me long term? Because it's very easy to start a business with the motivation for money. And then once you start making decent money, whatever decent money is to you, 150, 200, 250,000 a year, you start getting into those numbers and higher, and money stops really being that big of a motivation. It's like, well, I have really as much money as I want, especially when you're running your own business and pretty much everything you do is a write-off. It's like I'm living a pretty good life right now. That was really helpful for me to go, what is it that I want to do? Like, what is it that I am motivated to get out of bed for every morning? And I came to a couple of things. One was really making an impact in other people's lives. That could be my clients' lives, or that could be in, potentially in an employee's life. And the other thing was, I realized that I actually did want to build something bigger than myself. I wanted to build an organization that I could step away from, that would have a life beyond me. That was really exciting to me. And and a lot of people will, especially when you're talking about like an agency, like a services business, a lot of people have lifestyle businesses and love that. You can make really good money, like $400,000 or $500,000 a year with a lifestyle business where you're the guy, or maybe you have like one employee and it's you and one employee, and you can do that forever. And I realized that wasn't something that I was super motivated to do. I wanted to build something, and so that's when I really started to have a vision and a purpose for myself, and I felt more motivated and driven than I had ever before. And that's ultimately what led to me merging my company with Disruptive Advertising, is this idea of really building something long-term and lasting.
Great, and that's a brilliant segue into the next section, which is the build section. But just before we do that, what you articulated is exactly the reason why we've started Build, Live, Give. I think having that, like you said, it can be so lonely being an entrepreneur, and every entrepreneur is going to face challenges. And whether you're a natural, like you said, or whether you're, like that technical entrepreneur, you're going to face key challenges, and have a supportive group or a peer set that can help you through that, I think, is critical. So, I thought you articulated that really well. So now if I go into the build section, when you walk into a networking event, or you're about to get on stage and someone says, hey, Chris, what do you do? How do you answer that?
Yeah. So basically what I do is I help businesses learn about their customers online and figure out what kind of website experience their customers want. So the bottom line, the gravy of all of this, is that I help businesses increase the conversion rates of their sites. So you can make more money without having to send more traffic to your website. That's really the gist of it. I mean, that's my elevator pitch. And so the way that I do that, the way that I help companies make more money with their existing traffic, is we have a well-defined process that we take businesses through of how to test experiences with your users to learn what they want. It's not we're not an agency that sells best practices. We're not an agency that is all about the creative aspects of marketing. We are a data-driven organization. We try things out and we figure out what your audience is going to respond well to, and that's how we help businesses make data-driven changes to their website.
Great. And how do you make revenue in your agency?
Yeah, so we charge. We just have a recurring monthly agency fee, and so we build we build ongoing monthly strategies for our clients that are based on what we learn about their customers. So as we learn something that works, we focus on that more. As we find things that don't work on the website, that helps us learn about what the audience doesn't like, and then that propels us and drives us to successful tests. And so, we manage those ongoing monthly strategies, and we've got recurring monthly agency fees.
And who's your ideal client or clients?
Yeah. So the great thing is really anybody who is paying to get traffic to their website, we can help. The clients that we typically see the most dramatic success with are e-commerce clients. So anybody who is selling any kind of product online. The reason that we see such dramatic success with them is with an e-commerce website, if you're selling a product, if you can increase conversion rates, you make more money. It's that simple. When you have more of like a lead generation website, or you have like a subscription-based kind of website, it can get really hard to calculate ROI. It can get really hard to, if you increase conversion rates, you might decrease quality. And so, it can just get a little bit more hairy. But with e-commerce clients, it's just, there's a direct correlation, conversion rates to revenue.
Yeah, and if you had to summarize sort of 3 key things that you often see as the low-hanging fruit in improving conversions for e-commerce clients, what would those 3 things be?
Yeah, so the 3 biggest things for me are, number 1, distractions. So most e-commerce websites and most websites in general have a lot of things that are likely distracting your audience. And so I will just give one quick example. So we have a client that sells their target demographic is people that drive diesel trucks. So they sell all kinds of stuff, anything from like a diesel turbo kit to like a shot glass, right? They sell all kinds of products on their website. And on their homepage, when we started working with them, their homepage featured 40 or 50 or 60 different products on the homepage, because their whole thought process was, well, maybe you don't want a turbo kit for diesel. Maybe you want a shot glass. Maybe you want a belt buckle. Maybe you want a hat. And so we don't want to alienate any of those people. So one of the first few tests we ran, I call it an existence test, where we just remove stuff from the site. And we do that to identify things that are distracting. And we also do that to identify what things are actually making you money. And so we ran 8 different versions of their homepage where we just removed stuff. Out of those 8 different versions, 6 of them increased revenue. And so within 1 month, we had increased revenue just from their homepage by $30,000. And so, so distractions are a big deal. A lot of times it might be your other products that are distracting people. The next thing, and this is really pervasive across the entire web, is your call to action. So it's important that when someone comes to your website, they can identify within 2 to 3 seconds what they're supposed to do. So even if it's your home page and there's like 60 different things that they could do, it's important that within 2 to 3 seconds, you give them a recommended action to take. Like, click here to learn more about this, or check out this product. It's just important that there is an identifiable call to action that makes people feel good psychologically, and it creates less anxiety for your users. And then the last thing is how you communicate your value proposition. So whether you're selling a product or offering a service, there is some reason why this person should take action today. And so the way you communicate that value proposition, how clearly you communicate it, how succinctly you communicate it, and a lot of times there might be more than one value proposition. Like it might be, we sell cheap iPhones and we have free shipping and we deliver it to you in 2 to 3 days. And it's made locally or whatever. That's a lot of different things, a lot of different reasons why someone might buy your product. So it's important to identify which of those value propositions your audience actually cares about and not making assumptions. So those are the big 3 things: distractions, your call to action, and your value proposition.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you face continuing to scale your agency?
Yes. The biggest challenge that we face, like on a daily basis, is scaling at the right pace. So anticipating growth and then hiring to meet that growth. So it's, with an agency, it's really volatile. Like some months we will we grow faster than we can handle, and so then we try to hire like crazy to fill that capacity, and then some months we won't grow at all and we've overhired. And so that is a constant struggle, is hiring at the right pace to fill our growth without overhiring.
And I know you said you had, met your revenue targets within the first 6 months, which is brilliant. Did you also meet your commercial wage? So I always ask people, when in your journey did you meet a commercial wage target that you're comfortable with? Can you sort of give us an indication of when that happened for you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it was probably I would say about by month 8, I was making more with my business than I was as a full-time employee. And that was a big deal to me, because I was, I had a 6-figure salary before I started my business. And that is definitely not the case for most entrepreneurs. I mean, I was definitely an anomaly. And I had a lot of advantages going for me. I had a really high profit margin. I had an area of expertise, and with service-based businesses, I just had low costs. So it was relatively easy for me. I just had to get more clients, and it was just a matter of time for me.
Great. And a quick shout out to AJ Wilcox, who introduced me to Chris, and he had similar success. So there must be something in the water that you guys are drinking over there. Next question.
There's a lot of iron.
In Utah. Next question is around your partner, Jamie. So when she's listening to this podcast, what would you say to her for the support that she's given you through this journey?
Oh, I hands down, I could not have started or been successful with my business without her support. She was one of my biggest fans. She was my cheerleader. I mean, she was encouraging me to start a business way before I actually did it. And that was so critical. In fact, that's one of the things that one of my mentors told me. He said, if your spouse isn't bought into this, you will not be successful. Because, starting a business requires a lot of sacrifice. It requires a sacrifice of time, because to start any kind of successful business, it's going to take a lot of time to get it going. It's going to require financial sacrifices, and that absolutely impacts the whole family. And it requires, emotional and mental sacrifices, being completely exhausted and frustrated and stressed for a long, long period of time. And so without total support, I don't know that it's possible for an entrepreneur to be successful. And so I absolutely could not have done it without her.
And the next section's the live section. So what are some of the daily habits that help make you so successful?
Yeah, I have a lot of things. I actually have a list of, I call them dailies. They're things that I do every day to make sure that I am physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally taking care of myself. And so those kinds of things look like, here's one interesting thing. So because I run a digital marketing agency, I found that it was really easy for me to be like physically lazy, like just sitting in a chair all day. And I just was not feeling good. I wasn't feeling very alert. I wasn't feeling very awake. In fact, I just went to an event where Tony Robbins spoke last week. It was super inspirational. But one of the things that he really hit on that resonated with me was how tied together our emotional and physical states are. So he said, if you want to alter your emotional state, if you're feeling like stressed or angry or depressed, and you want to change that state, it's very difficult to do that without also changing your physical state. And so for me, it's been really important that I do something physically active. Some people go to the gym. Some people, will do just some kind of exercises. The thing that was the easiest for me to do that didn't require any extra time which I'm a huge fan of, is I started taking all of my calls outside. So I'd go walk around. I do this. In fact, I'm notorious in the office for just walking around, pacing around. People see me outside. So anytime I'm on like a sales call or, a client call or, any kind of phone call, conference call, I will go outside and I just walk around. And I can't tell you how much better I feel about that. So that's one of my big things is I need to be physically active. I meditate every day for at least 10 minutes. I'm a huge, huge fan of meditation. I feel like that helps me to emotionally process what's going on during the day. I have time for me to develop personal talents. So again, this is like non-work related. So a couple things that I used to do and have not done for a while is like I learned how to play the piano when I was a child, and I realized that was something I really enjoyed doing. So I have time set aside every day to practice the piano. Has nothing to do with business, and yet I feel more productive and I feel more motivated when I feel like I'm developing my personal talents and skill sets. I already mentioned painting as one of them, and that was one that, I just feel like I love myself more. I love who I am when I feel like I have something other than work that I'm excited about every day. And then I have time set aside to spend dedicated, focused time with my kids. Because one of the things I also realized is it's very easy for me to be distracted with my phone, with other things, and so I put my phone away. And I could dive more into the phone situation because I think that's a really big one for a lot of people. But I put my phone away and I am 100% mentally, emotionally, physically present with my kids. So those are really big things for me.
Yeah, look, great advice. And I did some work for a company called Franklin Covey, and they had a program called 5 Choices, and it talked about the 5 energy drivers. And I think you've done a brilliant job in summing those up. So great advice for our listeners. The next section is around the give section. So what's a cause that you're passionate about and why?
Yeah, so this was kind of a serendipitous moment for me. So I was on a plane flying back from Arizona, which is where I grew up, and I was flying by myself. I ended up sitting next to some woman and a little kid, and the kid was like the same age as I have a little 4-year-old daughter at home, and this was like a boy that was around the same age, and the kid was just kind of fussy and was asking his mom for candy, and the mom didn't have any, and so I am a junk food junkie, and so I always have a crap ton of candy in my bag. And so I said, "Hey, I actually have a bag of Skittles if he wants it." And we just struck up a conversation and started talking. It turned out her husband worked for an organization, did a lot of work with an organization called Operation Underground Railroad, and I was really intrigued because what they do is they're a group of fantastic people who rescue children who have been abducted for sex trafficking. And as a father with young girls, I am terrified of that. I have heard, you read these stories in the news about people being abducted and being rescued and all of the trauma that they go through. And, you see in movies and TV shows, you see tiny glimpses into this horrific world. And so when I heard that, I knew I had to get involved. And so, I have now for the last year and a half or so, donated some time and service, some of the services that I offer for my clients to this organization to really help promote that cause. And so, yeah, Operation Underground Railroad, fantastic organization, and I am in love with what they are doing.
Great. And we'll definitely have links so people can find out more about that in the show notes. The last section is the action section. And we'll ask you some questions and you just give some quick fire responses to help the Build, Live, Give audience take action. So the first one is your number one personal productivity tip.
Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier, but biggest productivity tip is to take time to process emotionally. So, and I already mentioned one of them, which is meditation. I think that's huge to help your body be able to process and have time to clear out, kind of clear the stage, so to speak. And one of the other things I do to stay really productive is I make phone calls every single day to someone to just voice emotions that I'm feeling, to be vulnerable, to practice vulnerability, because it's really easy. Like I said, as an entrepreneur, it's really easy to get stuck inside yourself. And when you kind of start hiding and you get, you get, I guess, trapped for lack of a better term, inside your own head. That is when things like depression, anxiety, and when you're feeling a ton of anxiety, you just can't think straight. And so I'm a huge believer in getting into, what a lot of people call like a flow state, where you just feel like things are working in your favor. You think clearly. And in order to think clearly, you have to be in tune with your emotions. And so I'm a huge believer of calling people and just practicing vulnerability. Hey, here's what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling pissed off about this, feeling stressed out about this, feeling worried about this. I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people could benefit from.
And you mentioned phones and being in control of your phone, but on your home screen, on your phone, what are some of the favorite apps that you've got and you use religiously?
Well, of course, I love podcasts. I'm a huge listener to a podcast. I think there's a lot of value that you can gain from those. And of course, I can't both, whether it's phone or computer, I couldn't live without Slack. I mean, we like run half our business through Slack. So, so I use a lot of that.
Great. And on podcasts, what's podcast you'd recommend and why?
One of my longtime favorites is the Tim Ferriss Show. And I like Tim Ferriss for a couple reasons. Number one, I think that he himself he lives what I do every day, which is testing, and he doesn't just test online. He tests everything in his life. He is a productivity master. And so, and not just a productivity master, he is a learning master. He is a guy that is constantly pushing himself to learn and experience new things. And I love that. And so, so I'm a huge fan of the Tim Ferriss Show. And I think that, he touches on concepts, about meditation and those kinds of things a lot. And so, anyways, I can't say enough good things about that show.
Excellent. And the only thing I'd love about Tim Ferriss' show is he'd change his ads or cut them shorter. I often listen to it riding my bike and I'm like, oh, here we go again. I'm going to hear the same thing that I've heard for 5 years.
Yeah. You can skip forward like 15 seconds a few times and get right past that.
Yeah, but you can't. But if you're riding your bike,
that's true.
The headphones to do it. Like, yeah. I want to actually invent some headphones where I have a 15 or a 30-second forward on my thing. So if any listeners out there know of any, or want to, crowdfund that with me, I'd be more than happy to. Brilliant. So look, you've given so much awesome advice on this podcast. It's been brilliant. But what's some parting advice, given all of your experience up to date? What's some parting advice you'd love to give the BLG listeners?
Yeah, so this is something that I tell my employees a lot. I think one of the most important things, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee, is to be your biggest fan. You have to believe in yourself with whatever you are doing. Because if you don't believe in yourself, and especially as an entrepreneur, if you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe in what you do, if you don't believe that what you are doing is providing value, then no one else is going to believe in you. And so I think it is so critical that whatever you are doing, you love what you're doing enough to be awesome at it, and just providing value, doing something that really provides value to others, because that's something that you can get excited about every day. That's something that you can get out of bed every day, really believing in, and really just believe that you have something to offer to others. Because, I mean, your sales pitch will just be that much more enticing if you believe in it, instead of saying, hi, I'm Chris and I do cool things sometimes,
Excellent. And how can people find out more about you and your business, Disrupt Advertising?
Yeah, so we've actually put together a free starter guide if anyone's interested in running A/B tests on their website, which again is what I do. I've got a resource guide that I put together that people can download if they go to disruptiveadvertising.com/guide. And then there's a little box if people are interested in talking with us and and learning more about our services. They can check that box, and we'll give them a call. And if they want to just download the guide, then don't check that box, and we won't pester them.
Great. And look, I know I get a lot of people saying, I just don't have enough traffic to do A/B testing. What is there a magical number, or any quick advice you'd give on people that are sitting there thinking, oh, I've got a great e-commerce business, but maybe it's just not too big enough for Chris to do some magic on?
Yeah, two things that I would say there. Number one, you should always, always, always be testing. Even if you don't get that much traffic, launch a test. And if it needs to run for 3 months, let it run for 3 months, but at least you are being productive with the traffic you have and you're learning something. And then the other thing I would say is, if you do have an e-commerce site, you should be sending more. You should always be sending more traffic there. And so start some PPC ads. Get some Facebook ads going. Facebook ads are great for e-commerce products. And you can do that in connection with website testing. That's why, what we do here at Disruptive is, we will manage ad campaigns and do the website testing. You give yourself a way better chance to be successful. So, you bottom line is you should always be testing no matter how much traffic you get, because otherwise you are wasting valuable opportunities to learn about your audience.
Brilliant. So once again, just a quick shout out to AJ Wilcox for introducing us to you, Chris, but it's just been brilliant. I've absolutely loved. I've learned a lot. I've taken plenty of notes myself, which will be in the links to the show notes here. But I really wanted to appreciate you for your openness, your advice, and we wish you every success in the future.
Thank you so much, and it has been my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.